Need a presenter? Your Event Audio has you covered. Closed-circuit audio equipment with turnkey operation at your trade show booth, live event, or private event. YourEventAudio.com is the place to go. DJ services, MC talent, and a whole lot more. Check out YourEventAudio.com today.
Welcome to the May 31st edition 2024 of the EXHIBITOR Now Podcast, combined with the Association and Advocacy Focus podcast for the month of May. We're doing it all here in Washington, D.C. I'm Mike Morrison, National Sales Director. I can't say that anymore. I'm actually the VP of Sales for WS Display. You get like muscle memory, right?
That's right.
You keep saying things over and over again. You get used to it. And I've done it on this podcast for so long that saying VP of Sales now is kind of a weird thing. But I am VP of Sales and co-host of the show. As you see, sitting in at this week's show is a no stranger to the show, is also publisher of the Exhibitor magazine, and that's Emily Olson. And then, of course, our co-host of the Association Advocacy Focus podcast, and that would be Tommy Goodwin, who's arranged all of this happening this year. I think this one, Tommy, makes 5 or 6, not including the virtual.
No, this is one of the wonderful things every year with Legislative Action Day is we've got folks who are here for the first time, and it's great to be able to give them that experience. But then we've got folks like yourself who have been here for the long haul and still keep coming back to tell your story. So it is always much appreciated. And
then you've got a newcomer to the game, and that's Emily Olson coming to Legislative Action Day for the first time. We'll talk a little bit about your experience in a second, but what do you think of DC so far?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Such a beautiful city.
So, I don't know if she's going to move here or, do her duties from here, and what's going to happen with that. Let's cut to the issues. And unlike other ones before Tommy, where there were probably 4 and 5 deep of bullet points that we were talking in, and I remember that because I'm the Georgia delegation, and so I would have 5 people in my group, and each one of us would have something to talk about. We had that many in the past. This time it's really kind of only 2, and I'll let you kind of refresh everybody's memory as to what those were.
Yeah, so this year we were talking about 2 things. We were talking about the ongoing visa delays and how we can get the government to play a more active role in helping to remediate those problems, but also talking, as we have so often on this podcast, about helping the industry recruit and train its next generation workforce, right? We know we need to bring the next generation in. There are opportunities for Congress to play a leadership role in making sure that our industry and so many other industries have an opportunity to thrive going forward. There are 2 issues that have really broad bipartisan support, so that's what we really wanted to highlight this year because, as folks have seen on TV and read online, not necessarily the most productive Congress we're looking at these days. We want to focus on the things that we think can actually get done this year because folks are coming and spending their time and their hard-earned to be with us. We want them to be the most effective advocates possible and talk about what Congress can really do, even in this unique political environment.
So it's interesting that we can take those 2 points and work with them. And what's funny is, not funny, but interesting is on the interview time that we've got coming up in the show, we've talked to several people and talked with them about their experiences and what they've talked about with the legislators and senators on the Hill. And it's really varied as to how they've replied, how they've come back, what they've learned. It's amazing always, do you know what a trade show is, first of all? That's the one that gets asked, and it was about a 50-50 split from what I've heard, but also some of our people who participated in the interviews time talked and explained their impact on the industry, where they come from, and they now understand it a little better. So it's really good to have a big cross-section of our industry that comes here and can preach that sermon.
It is because we have impact nationwide. All 50 states, we know that trade shows, conferences, exhibitions are tremendous generators of economic growth. We know that there's a lot of direct hiring. We have 2.5 million people plus nationwide who work in this industry and support this industry. So for folks to be able to come and tell those stories, I think it's really impactful. But to your point, whether it's the visa wait times or the workforce issues, this is stuff that hits everybody in the industry. This isn't something that's specialized just to show organizers or experiential designers and producers, right? If we don't have international exhibitors and attendees, that means smaller international pavilions, that's less labor hours, that's less booths being built, that's less time for service contractors. That affects everybody all the way down, and we know that everybody's impacted by the workforce issues, right? Everybody's having a challenge bringing in that next generation. So wherever in the industry you are, whatever segment you're in, there is something in this agenda in this legislative action day for them.
Absolutely, and I'm going to talk again with Emily, because first time that she's had an opportunity to go into a person's office and talk about this industry at this realm. What you should appreciate, by the way, is the weather, because last year I remember hiking the hill. Chris Griffin and a couple of us were like sweating like just ragged dogs by the time we even got into the representative's office. I'm surprised they even let us in because the weather was so hot. But today has been really, really nice, and that's you got lucky for the weather forecast. But tell us a little bit about your experience with your legislator and what you experienced and talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. It was thrilling. I'm no stranger to advocacy work at the local level, but doing it at a federal level was new to me. And honestly, it was a little intimidating at first, the idea of it. But to Tommy's credit, you made it so easy. I walked into these meetings with all the talking points, all the information that I needed, bios of the representatives I was talking to, so I really felt well prepared walking into these meetings. And then what I discovered once I was there was that they were thrilled to see me, because my being there and representing the industry helped support causes that they were already trying to advance.
Absolutely, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a repeat person who's come here ever since we've started implementing this, or you're a first timer. Kudos to Tommy and what he does with this layout of your script as to how you talk to the people, what you say. We have this planning time that you get to get together with everybody here, about 130 or so, give or take, that were there this morning for our planning and strategy of how to go forward. You had the webinars that led up to that. But it's always that when you walk in a senator's office or a congressperson's office, there is a little bit of the squeamish butterflies that you go into. And they're people, but you also remember this is where the sausage is made, right?
Well, they're people you see on TV. They're people you see online. They're folks who have a tremendous amount of power and ability and impact to sway what happens in their district or their state. And that can be a little intimidating if you've never done it before. But the thing we try to really remind folks about is, anybody who comes in here, whether you're a first timer or whether you've been here every year since this got started, 1,000 times more about the industry than the folks on the other side of the desk. You're there to educate, you're there to inform, you're there to tell your story, and at the end of the day, don't forget, you're also their employer, right? We are approaching an election, as everybody knows, and you go in and mark down on the ballot, or you pull the lever for these folks, and so they're going to want to hear from you. They need that feedback, because sometimes in DC it can be like a little bit of its own ecosystem, right? We're all talking to each other. They need to know what's going on back home. And who better to tell them than the people who listen to this podcast, who are here today, who are part of the industry, to be able to talk about what they're doing and why it should matter to them.
For back-to-back years, we have had our quote-unquote headquarters here in the American Trucking Association building, and so you'll hear some people in the background talking, because this is where everyone can come, Emily, and charge their phones and break out their laptops, get Wi-Fi access, go to the restroom, get snacks. I think I covered it all, but basically take a time out from a day where you're up there walking, and because there's a lot of walking going on. Capitol Hill's not a small place, and there is to take an Uber would be extremely expensive, and God knows we work on a budget in this game. So what else can you say before we take a break and get on our interview about your first time that resonates with you, that you could tell somebody who might be watching or listening and says, you know what, maybe I should try that next year?
The experience was really awe-inspiring. Walking past these buildings, walking into these buildings where there's so much history and so many important things are happening, it was moving. It was really moving, and I feel as though we as citizens have a duty to be here and doing the things that we're doing at this event. So I really enjoyed it, and I absolutely will do it again.
Good points. So as I mentioned on the front end, we took some time, and it's probably about 10 or so people that signed up on the list to come over and talk with me about their experiences here and who they talked with and what they talked about, specifically about our asks and what we're trying to get done during the 2024 version of the Legislative Action Day. Take a quick break and come back with those after this.
Attention, trade show and event marketing professionals. Are you ready to take your face-to-face marketing expertise to the next level? Join more than 3,000 candidates currently enrolled in Exhibitor Group's Certified Trade Show Marketer Program. CTSM is corporate America's top source of the industry's best trade show and corporate event training. CTSM certified trade show marketers enjoy expanded career opportunities, greater respect and authority in their organizations, and earn higher salaries than their acronym-free peers. Learn more, earn more. Visit ctsm.com today. Hey everybody, Mike Morrison back with you here in my Atlanta home office after Legislative Action Day in Washington, D.C. Want to take a minute and recap the interviews segments that I had with several people. Some were first-timers, some were legacy people who have been going to Legislative Action Day for a while now. But Mark Ghaffari was a first-timer from Heritage and had this to say about his experience.
Really spurred based on how we're this hidden industry that not a lot of people really know about. I didn't know about it before I fell into it myself. And what we saw during the pandemic and in 2020 was that because we weren't really talking about it, no one really saw us there. So they almost forgot about us for a brief period of time until we realized that, opened up our eyes and realized that we needed to advocate for ourselves on that side of things. So that was a big driver for me to be able to kind of step out of my comfort zone and be able to advocate for what we do on an everyday basis. We've got a lot of people in this industry that are really trying to drive forward some fantastic things across the board, across the whole world in every sector that's out there. So advocating for those hardworking individuals to make sure that their industry doesn't fall by the wayside and that it really has the focus that it deserves is what pushed me here.
Eric Udler from All Show Services, who puts on shows for the pet industry as well as home improvement, had an opportunity to sit down with him and talk about how his sector is affected by the work at Legislative Action Day.
Both the visa issue and the staffing issue are such timely topics, right? Those are the challenges our industry is facing. And I'm not sure one stuck out more than the other. They're both equally important. You have trade shows that are going to be 6 or 9 or 12 months down the road, and people want to exhibit. Small businesses want to get into participating in trade shows, and if they're from overseas and they can't get a visa, and right now the visa wait times might be 800 or 900 days, I mean, we're planning an event in the fall. How do we handle that? How can we speed things up? And at the same time, there's a daunting challenge for our industry bringing in new blood and educating people about what we do and how we do it. And we lost so much during the pandemic. So many people left the industry, and some have come back and some haven't. But I was grateful that Congressman Rapskin's office met with us and was saying, they asked some good questions. What do you mean? What do you mean training the younger generation? And we talked about truck drivers, forklift drivers, all the people that are around an event that might not get seen. You walk into a convention center, oh God, how did this happen? What are the steps to make that happen? So we need to educate and bring up new blood in our industry, especially with the number of people retiring each year.
The Global Association of the Exhibition Industry, also known as UFI, had representation there for Legislative Action Day in D.C. Kai Hattendorf and Martha Donato took time to talk about their respective roles with UFI.
Well, you're right, Mike. Actually, when we set up Global Exhibitions Day back in 2016, we were building on the events that were already existing to advocate for the sector. And Exhibitions Day here in the US was one of them. So it's no coincidence that actually one of the inspirations for Global Exhibitions Day being on the first Wednesday in June each year was that we already had an advocacy event here in the US going to Capitol Hill. So again, this year, LAD, as it's now called, is one of the activations we see in the industry around the world. Today in Thailand, they had a government conference. Today in South Africa, they released a sustainability roadmap for the industry, and all this is 1 week out from the main day of Global Exhibitions Day. And we're doing this day to advocate for our sector with lawmakers and legislators like here in the US, but also to literally ask the whole sector to stand up and be counted, to show the industry how many we are. And I'm sure we will have activations again in more than 100 countries around the world.
So the reason UFI decided to found the North American chapter was because we already had a base of members in Canada, in the US, and in Mexico, and they were unrepresented from a chapter point of view. So they still attended UFI meetings and were a part of the community, but they decided around the middle of last year that there was enough base for us to start the chapter. And I was very honored that they selected us to be the first regional directors for the North American chapter. So I would say we start with over 50 members already, and our goal is to create a community that exists within the global community, but also here in North America, that we have our own cadence and our own community build that happens here. And as such, when we're here in Washington, D.C. this week for ECEF and Legislative Action Day, we did a meetup with our members, very casual, just to start to coalesce as a group. And that bodes very well for the future. You're asking about short-term and long-term. Our goal is really just to continue to provide excellence for the members in the community. And as part of that as well, on September 10th through the 12th, we'll be meeting jointly with the South and Latin American chapters with what we are calling the UFI Americas Conference. That's going to be held in Monterrey, Mexico. And we are really excited about that opportunity and really pleased that Fernando Fisher, who's the president of RX, as you know, is going to provide our keynote. And he has a really nice bridge from South America to North America. So we're really pleased about how it's all coming together.
For many years, people have known Rachel Wimberly from Tarsus Group and her work with TSNN. And now, of course, she has moved on to the Hive Group. She's the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development and M&A with them. And she was at Legislative Action Day. We had an opportunity to chat a little bit about what's going on with Hive Group and her new role there.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that, mainly because I work on the M&A, side of the industry. So, I do mergers and acquisitions in North and South America for our company. So I'm assessing other companies all the time besides, know the ins and outs of ours. More people are doing a lot more with less, and that less could be deciding to not to do carpeting at shows anymore, like on a show, just a pure show choice, or instead of having breakout rooms with full AV, multiple ones and stages and such, just sometimes it's better coordination. So it's actually, in a weird way, forcing people to be more deliberate about where they're spending their money and what they're spending their money on, instead of just saying we've always done it that way, type of thing. And then I think that where it's getting pressured the most, honestly, is on the staffing side. I think that a lot of places are realizing that their staffs are burnout. They just went through COVID, they came out of COVID, they had to get shows live. Now all of a sudden now there's the pressure to get shows profitable. And it's just like, the pedal has been down to the floor for so long, and a lot of these show companies are now having trouble staffing up. It's so the same group of people are still under pressure. So that's gotta, that pedal needs to come up soon because it's just not sustainable.
A group that has taken off pedal to the metal, taking Rachel Wimberly's most recent statement just right there, has been the exhibitor advocate. And Jessica Sabilla has made her name within the industry in the last couple of years. She was at Legislative Action Day and had this to say about her experience.
So for the exhibitor advocate to be at Legislative Action Day and advocate for issues that do touch exhibitors, I think it makes a statement both for exhibitors to understand that they are a part of this industry. They do play a very important, critical role in how this industry is successful. And then it also offers us the opportunity to show our support of the issues that are incredibly important to this industry, things like workforce development and visa delays. We want to make sure that exhibitors understand and are represented when we say that it's important to have a skilled workforce, and we support that. And we want to make sure that our representatives in the House and the Senate understand that exhibitors support those issues as a part of the broader industry.
And to wrap things up, Mac Campbell, who's the executive director of the Baltimore Convention Center, came by to chat with us a little bit about a perspective that they have on the issues for Legislative Action Day.
I'm wearing two hats. Mike, I'm obviously representing traditional convention business in Baltimore specifically, but I'm also representing the International Association of Venue Managers as part of the coalition of associations supporting ECA and the work being done today. Really excited. This is IAVM's first involvement. It's also my first involvement on the Hill. I've done local politics, but never at the federal level, despite being born and raised here. And so the couple of meetings we've had today, I'm sure you've heard this similar story. It's first and foremost making sure they understand, if we're constituents, that we're actually the voting public, and those that we serve are voting public. Secondly, do you know what we do for a living, and fact checking that piece. And then going into the issues, and you know, a building like mine, 1.2 million square feet, is a microcosm of all the work that all of these associations are doing, whether it's ASAE or ESCA or you know, PCMA or us with IAVM. All of that type of work is being done under our roof, and I don't think most politicians, and this is probably true with all industries, really understand what happens behind the curtain to make X happen. Most people don't realize that when they go to a convention that, you know, 2 hours later, half an hour later, a day later, the building will look completely different, and that there's an association for literally everything, right? I've got the fish encrinology. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right, but like fish researchers coming in. I mean, there's a convention for everything, and understanding that, gosh, the ripple effect that every downtown core with a convention center doesn't have when we're not running on full cylinders. I mean, COVID was a prime example of that, and what the business traveler and the travel tourist, really the impact they leave on a city makes a big difference. So, long story short, most folks don't realize that they are really looking at so many different constituents and so much money that is being left in our markets, and so today has been well received, and hopefully we'll go 3 for 3 here in a minute.
Interesting statement that he said there at the end to wrap things up. A lot of these legislators and their staffers don't know what we do, first of all. Second of all, they don't know how much money is being left on the table because of their lack of knowledge and their help in getting us bigger and better. And of course, these two asks that were on the table, the visa wait program, if you will, for lack of better words, the increase of the time to process that so that we can get more international travel in, means more dollars on the table being spent here in the United States. And secondly, of course, trying to further the education process for the trade and for non-traditional four-year college degrees with Pell Grant money and other funding that can be shifted with a tax break to those students would be tremendously received within our industry.
Those two asks should be bipartisan, and it shouldn't take a long time to get that done. We'll see where it goes. We come back and wrap up my final show here at Exhibitor Now. It comes up after this.
Are you searching for trade show and event products and services? Find It on Exhibitor Exchange is your complete buyer's guide to trade show exhibiting and events, featuring the trade show industry's top exhibit and display providers. Find It on Exhibitor Exchange is the industry's best shopping and commerce resource for buyers and sellers of exhibit and event products and services. Reaching 20,000 exhibit and event buyers in every print issue of Exhibitor magazine and 140,000 exhibit and event buyers online each year. Search the listings or list your company today. Learn more at exhibitoronline.com/findit.
So, Mike, at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned a new role that you have at your organization, which is fabulous, and I'm so excited for you. But that is going to have an impact on the podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, it is. So today will be my last podcast with the Exhibitor Group. So this has been a year, almost a year and a half, a year and 5 months that Mark Johnson and I started Exhibitor Now. And then shortly thereafter, I would say, Tommy, you and I started with Mark the Association and Advocacy Focus podcast. And because now I've elevated to a VP of sales role and I'm bringing on regional sales managers, obviously that requires, you go from governing yourself to governing more people. And that, obviously entails a bigger responsibility. So make a long story short, I will be exiting stage left for this particular podcast. Some of you may have seen that a good buddy of mine, Todd Nall, who runs the Facebook group, You Work in Trade Shows Win, and I will be doing a live stream podcast, video cast starting next Friday there, and we'll be dropping links of where you can find that. So not departing podcast in general, but this particular one. And that one, just be honest with you, the question is, well, wait a minute, if you're leaving this one, why you doing? Well, it's a little different. It's fun talk. It's not focused solely on Exhibitor Group or this particular genre of focus. And it'll be across the board with trade shows, live events, and experience market, which is what I've been doing for 7 years. So to answer your question, yes, I will be moving on, and I'm sure that Exhibitor Group will be going on with their plans as well. Tommy and I are talking about some possibilities, and there's always possibilities, right?
Well, everybody in this industry knows that the reward for doing good work is the opportunity to do even more good work. And that's obviously is what happened to you at WS. But as you mentioned, you and Mark graciously allowed ECA to be part of this and invited us in and gave us an opportunity to talk about the advocacy work of the industry on an ongoing basis. And, the Exhibitor Group and yours willingness to leave the drawbridge down for us has been incredibly meaningful. It's given us the opportunity to keep people up to date with what's going on, talk about what we're doing, which is why we have 130 or so folks with us here today. So incredibly grateful to you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure. We've become friends over the years, and so this has been something that I have enjoyed greatly. But as you said, you've got a new opportunity. I'm sure more great things will be happening with the Exhibitor Now podcast. So stay tuned, everybody, but this has been great, and, we're grateful to both of you for the opportunity to help ECA get the word out.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that friendship that we've developed. It's been good. It's helped me stay on top of the advocacy side, where otherwise I probably would not have done that. And so, if you have that opportunity, I know not everybody in this industry has the even capacity to get involved, come to Washington, D.C. But you can always stay on top of it and be knowledgeable of what's happening. Call your congressman, call your senator. Funny, I'm glad I said that, because I meant to tell you that I got an email as I was flying up here yesterday from Senator Ossoff, his office, and you know about what it's about. It was about the facial recognition situation that went out from the U.S. Travel Association about a month ago, right? And because it was possibly coming to a vote where they were going to discontinue that, or at least there was a legislation out there, a bill that was being circulated. And the U.S. Travel Association went out and said, which is a part of ECA, big partners, and they're like, we need this. We need to keep doing this because it keeps travel moving. And so I gave them my input. He wrote a long letter back. I don't know if it was form or not, but at least he replied. So there's that.
It's like we were talking about earlier, right? You are ultimately their employer. And they want to hear what's on your mind, and they want to make sure that, as they can be, they're being responsive to what your needs and wants are. And U.S. Travel did a great job with that. It is really, when you get involved in this advocacy realm, you will start to see the feedback. You'll start to hear back from these folks, because that's how the relationships get formed, and that's how they get a better understanding of the industry, understanding of your organizations, what you're involved in, and beginning to anticipate what those needs are, and that's when you really start to see the change happen. So that's just one good example of why advocacy works and why it matters, and why we're so grateful that so many folks are here with us today.
And it's tough to get old when you don't make notes to remind yourself to tell him about that, because as I sit there and talk, it'll eventually come back around full circle, and I'll get there. But once again, I enjoyed being a part of that. And I guess, Emily, I'll give you the last word as you start to take this over.
Thank you, Mike, and Exhibitor Group wishes you so much success, and we're so grateful for your expertise and everything that you did with the podcast. Kim Gischler will remain in one of the host seats with a rotating cast of co-hosts. I hope to join her myself on occasion. David Dubois, our senior writer, Charles Pappas, will join her with guests on occasion. So the podcast will continue. We're certainly going to miss you, though.
I'm a customer. I mean, I'm an exhibitor at Exhibitor Live. I'm a customer. I'm not going anywhere. It's just a realignment of job duties and what's required. But I'll still be around. You'll catch me on the other podcast. But I appreciate all the hospitality, Tommy, and the opportunity to come up and be a part of Legislative Action Day here on the Exhibitor Now podcast.